the exact amount of hairs. Does your walk? You just hit the clip. We put the sign out so in case anybody else. You hit the clip. You hit the clip. Oops. Close your eyes, everyone. Close your eyes. Back. Oh, you really close your eyes. How do I do this? AV guide. Go back one.
The one in the video.
Yeah, just no, believe it without a green thing. Is this with the thing? Thank you. Thank you. This is my boyfriend.
Hello, everybody.
Now I know who you are. All right. So thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here tonight. I know everyone has very busy, chaotic lives, and you're here to basically get some education, get some information. And I usually, when I give this presentation, I have people of all ages, but the majority of people tend to be middle age. And I feel that the reason is that when you hit middle age, that's when you realize that you're no longer immortal, right? And you start thinking of your past and things that you could have done differently and you should have, could have. And even though we cannot pick our consequences, we can pick our choices. And it's never too late to pick our choices. So I feel that we live in a society right now where there's just so much information out there and everyone's on information overload. And my job tonight is to give you lots of information so that you can leave here more enlightened than what you already are, and to help you and compel you. So I feel that when you're in middle age, you start thinking of your golden years and how you're going to live out those golden years. And you don't want to live them out, fat, sick, and nearly dead, right? So you start thinking about ways that you can start fulfilling that bucket list that you've had. And that's something that is very important to all of us, I'm sure. So when you think of your golden years, I mean, you all have heard or met someone that died in their 90s or 100, and they were still mentally with it and they were physically with it, right? And if any of you are like me, I'm thinking, wow, this is how I want to die. I don't want to be a burden on my family, on my children, on my loved ones. And I want to be in my 90s or 100 and still be able to walk and still be able to think clearly. And there are people now that are in their 60s and 70s and they have dementia. They're in a wheelchair, they're in an oxygen tank, or on dialysis, and that's not quality of life. So they're existing, but they're not living. Okay, so my purpose for you tonight is to basically compel you and to give you some information so that when you think of the rest of your life and how you want to live the rest of your life, you start thinking, let me just make sure. Next door. So when you think of the rest of your life, you want to live it, full of quality, right? So who here feels that they fulfilled their purpose in life? Raise your hand. Who has fulfilled their purpose? No one, yes. Okay. So I don't think partially, right?
Partially.
Yeah, he's retired. He's ahead of us. So I don't feel that you can fulfill your purpose in life if you don't have your health. So basically your health is your wealth. And when you have your health and you want to, start thinking about fulfilling that purpose and everything, you have a bigger impact on those around you, okay? If you don't have your health, then it makes everything that much harder, right? So what makes me qualified basically to be here tonight and give this talk? So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Espinal, and what I am is an allopathic physician. And an allopathic physician basically has an MD after their name, which means that I got my doctorate in medicine. I'm a board certified OBGYN, so I do deliveries, I do gynecologic surgeries, but I also practice functional medicine. Who knows what functional medicine is? Raise your hand. You don't know. What's functional medicine? What is it? It's like eating healthy like this. Functional medicine.
It's like, I guess like the closest thing is like integrated medicine, where you
Integrated.
take a look at the whole person, and not only you don't treat only the disease, but you kind of look at the entire individual.
Exactly. You hit it on the nail. So basically, what a functional medicine doctor does is they look at the person as a whole, and what they do is they look at the biochemical process of the disease. So even though we might learn that in school, when later on in life, when people are physicians, practitioners, whatever the case is most people, most doctors or practitioners, they put a Band-Aid on the problem, and they don't nip it in the bud. So what a functional medicine doctor does, for example, is let's say someone comes in and they have a blood pressure, a fasting blood sugar of 105. A primary care doctor will say, listen, it's not bad, but it can be better. So just watch what you eat. Bye-bye, they see you next year. A year later, you come in, fasting blood sugar is at 115 this time, right? And what does a regular doctor do? Listen, I don't like this, it's a little higher than it was last year, you need to make sure you hit the gym and make sure that you don't eat that many carbs. So the patient's like, okay, it's fine, thank you, bye. What does the person do? No one really changes their lifestyle. They come back a year later, and now their fasting sugar is at 127. And what happens then?
Medication.
They're diabetic. Because the definition of diabetes is blood sugar of 126 or higher. So that person didn't get enough handhold, did not get enough education, right? What a functional medicine doctor does is, instead of just whipping out that prescription pad and waiting till they're over 126 and writing, prescription, if it's at 105, like, whoa, wait a minute. This is not optimal. So it's normal, but it's not optimal, because optimal is less than 85, and most people don't walk around with a blood sugar less than 85 thinking that's normal unless someone teaches them that. So that's what a functional medicine doctor does. And so what I want to do is I want to basically be someone's coach. So I have patients, and when I coach them, it's not just me, there's a group of us, who are part of the program, and it's to teach you more than what you'll ever get from just going to a doctor's office and just, seeing your doctor once a year, whatever the case is, right? So that being said, let's talk about, well, before I go to the next slide, the system that we live in now, the healthcare system. Who thinks that there's a healthcare crisis in America? Okay, and why is that?
There's many reasons, but I think the majority of it is, first of all, nobody teaches you about health, okay, unless you learn it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The medical community is designed to come in and put a Band-Aid on it, like you said, or to treat the symptom, not the source of the problem. And so as long as we don't learn, and we don't get really, I think, an education about health, we learn we're supposed to eat the 3 squares or whatever it is, the protein, we're supposed to have some of
Those
each.
macros,
And we don't know really in what sort of form, and unless you do any real research about what your body needs, you're not really going to know how to function optimally, because what you eat is really going to design how you function as a machine or as a human being.
Exactly. Anybody else want to add as to why there's a healthcare crisis?
I think it's because what I've seen is that everybody looks at each other, and it's so normal for everybody to look this certain size that you don't notice that you are either obese, overweight, or just not enough. So it's like everyone's like, well, no, I'm fine, I'm okay. And then by the time they even go to the doctor, it's too late. Or
And I have a great slide that I'm going to show on that, actually.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the pharmaceutical industry and money generates a lot of, fear and precedent and patterns and behaviors.
Exactly. So basically, there's a healthcare crisis in the United States because what's happening is that practitioners, and the reason I say practitioners, not just doctors, it's nurse practitioners, nurses, is that they're taught disease. So I love learning about disease. My major in college was microbiology and immunology, so I'm like, oh, bring it on. But the thing is, we're not taught health. And who here's in the medical industry, in the medical field? And how many nutrition classes did they teach you?
Maybe 4 or 5 lectures.
Mhm.
In
Okay.
all 4 years of life.
In 4 years of medical school, okay? And that's gotten better because I got 1 lecture in 4 years back in like 2000. So they don't really teach that. It's not something that's important. They teach disease. So if someone has, let's say they're smokers and they have emphysema, and they go to the hospital because they have emphysema or COPD, what is the hospital going to put their money on as far as research? It's going to be on emphysema. They're not going to teach tobacco cessation. Why not? Then they make people healthy, and then there's less people going to the hospital, right? So they're not teaching that. They're teaching disease, and then the research goes into that disease. So we learn more about COPD and emphysema and pneumonia and everything like that. We learn about lung disease, but we're not learning about how to prevent that disease, right? So let me make sure I do it right. Ooh. So the America's healthcare crisis, we're being lied to, right? Why? Because of money. Okay? So all right. So what happens is that the system now is broken, and they want you to depend on that little card called your insurance card, right? So when people have an insurance card, what do they think? They think that that insurance card is what's gonna fix the problem, right? Make sure you get a job, make sure you have benefits, because if you don't have that insurance card, that's it, you're done, right? And every time you use that insurance card is cha-ching, cha-ching, there's more money that's being put into the system. But what's happening is that we're not fixing the underlying problem. And then this is what the World Health Organization believes, that 90% of all diseases prevalent today are not treatable with orthodox medical procedures, right? So it's great to have that insurance card if it's something acute. So like, let's say for example, you have a stroke, you have an asthma attack, you definitely wanna go to the hospital for that. But what's happening now is that that insurance card, 85% of people who use their insurance card are using it for chronic degenerative disease, not for anything that's acute. And the more that, the more people have insurance cards, the more diagnostic tests they get as well. And for those of you who don't know, just a few months ago, perfect example, one of someone, I forgot his title, at one of the hospitals that I work at, said, well, guess what, you're not getting a stipend because you're not ordering enough mammograms. And I'm like, well, I'm ordering mammograms, but I can't force people to get them. But in reality, I'm not ordering mammograms. But I just said that. And he says, well, you're not getting your stipend. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna sell my soul to the devil, right? Then a couple months pass by, I still don't order enough according, to their standards. And he said that they're gonna reevaluate me, and in January, I'm most likely going to get dropped from this insurance. So patients who have that insurance, who have seen me for years, they're not gonna know why I don't take the insurance. They're gonna be upset I don't take the insurance, right? But it's gonna be hard to explain to each and every one what's going on. And basically, doctors, practitioners, I mean, we're just puppets right now at this point. Because if we don't do what they say, we get dropped. The ones who have it the worst are pediatricians. And actually I don't know if she's coming tonight, but I had one pediatrician that was coming tonight. And I mean, I feel so sorry for her because for all pediatricians, if they work for the hospital or they take insurance and they're not cash-based, if they do not give vaccines, even if they're against certain vaccines, they'll get dropped, okay? So all these physicians were basically just puppets, okay? Because the system is what's controlling us, We don't have the freedom that we had before. So basically, the system is about disease, and most people that are on medication, they're expected to be on medication for a long time. Who here is taking any medication, a prescription medication? And okay, so you're taking one. When did your doctor say you can come off that medication?
Well,
That's her husband?
yes. 1 to 3 years, because it's
Okay.
for the cancer.
Okay,
So I have one more.
And the
almost a
other?
year. The other one is in life.
exactly. So if it's, let's say for example, you're on a blood pressure medicine, right? So your blood pressure is 180 over 100, and now you need blood pressure medicine. Instead of saying, okay, well, why is your blood pressure that high? What is going on? What's going on with the endothelium? What they do is they write a prescription, and you're on it for life. And does the prescription medication that you're taking, do they have side effects?
Yes.
Yeah, they all have side effects. Because imagine, even one for blood pressure, which is supposed to prevent you from getting a heart attack, if you're blunting a natural physiologic response, right? The reason you get high blood pressure is in response to something. Now you're blunting this, you're blocking this response. That's a normal physiology that's not normal in your body anymore, right? That's gonna have a lot of potential side effects, right? So that's what's happening. They want us to get scared And what I want to do tonight is I want to empower everyone so people are not relying on their insurance card, right? I don't have regular insurance. I have what's called catastrophic insurance. So if I get a stroke, an asthma attack, whatever, I go to the hospital, I pay my deductible, and then I'll get treated. But if I want to get a pap smear, for example, I just have to pay out of pocket. If I saw my pediatrician, my kids, same thing. I saw my pediatrician last week, and I just paid her out of pocket. Much cheaper than what I was paying on a monthly basis, right? And it wasn't covering a lot of things anyway, so that's why I just changed to catastrophic. But we don't want to use our insurance card. Who has car insurance? Do you guys want to use your car insurance? Who has life insurance? Who wants to use that one? Yeah, nobody wants to use that one. So we have to learn to empower ourselves and not to rely on that little card, because that card, everyone thinks is going to fix the problem, right? The system wants to instill fear into patients. They want to instill fear into doctors. They want to make people think that without them, right, that's it, you're done for. But in reality, you have to take control of your health. You have to take control of your life, and you have to do your due diligence, and it's unfortunate, and do your own research, okay? So America's health crisis, we have wrong or lacking information. So who has seen this little concoction? This came out a while ago. This is just one example I found, but it could be any. It could be the butt mask or the thigh burner or whatever. So whenever these things come out, what is it that happens? You watch the infomercial, you see the girl with the nice buns, the guy with the 8-pack, and you're like, oh my God, right? And it's addicting. You just stare, I want to be, and it's only what? 10 minutes, 3 times a week? Oh, forget it, I'm getting this, right? You end up getting something like this, you do it for a whole month, and what happens? Nada, right? And the reason is because they gave you the wrong information, right? They lied to you. They're telling you, listen, if you do this machine 3 times a week, this is what you're gonna look like, right? Because that's how all those, that's how the guys got the major muscles and the girls have the flat abs, right? But when you have wrong or lacking information, chances are you're not gonna do it. If you don't see results, you're gonna quit, okay? So same thing with, I'm sure all of you have been on a treadmill, right? And if you're on a treadmill for 30 minutes, how many calories do you burn? About 200. And that's basically equivalent to a pancake, or I looked it up, 5 Guys is equivalent to 1/4 of their cheeseburger. Okay, so it's basically nothing. And how many calories are in a pound? Who knows?
3,600.
3,500, close. 3,500 calories are in a pound. So imagine trying to burn 1 pound. You have to do at least 500 calories a day. And I'll be damned if I'm on a treadmill that long, because I hate them, if anything, for me, there's some place to hang your clothes on, right? So what's more important? To burn calories on something like a treadmill, or to have more muscle? To have muscle, because muscle determines your metabolism, right? And how many calories does it take to sustain 1 pound of muscle in a month? Does anyone know that? 1,500 calories to sustain 1 pound of muscle, okay? How many calories does it take to sustain 1 pound of fat? Anyone know?
Hey Siri.
0, because it's energy. So the reason we store fat is because that's our energy source. So we don't need to sustain it, it's supposed to sustain us. So if you, instead of trying to burn all these calories on a treadmill, if all you did was gain 5 pounds of muscle, you would burn 7,500 calories doing nothing, right? Because you need 1,500 per pound, okay? So it is better to gain more muscle. That way you don't have to work out that much. So if I were to tell you, listen, I can help you gain 5 pounds of muscle in a month, right? You're gonna look better, you're gonna feel better, you're gonna see results. So chances are that you're gonna stick to the program, because now you're gonna feel better, right? You're gonna feel great. So, and then we have a lot of people who are not being proactive. So I have patients, I'm like, what kind of exercise do I do? Oh, I walk my dog, and then they're probably doing something like this, right? And these are the same patients. I'm not here to criticize my lovely patients, but they'll come here and they have, a knee injury, or they come with a cast, whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, doc, I gained 5 pounds. I'm like, what was your workout regimen before the accident? Cricket. It wasn't a workout regimen. And it's not the patient's fault. If you're not used to doing something, it's not natural for you to start working out 5 times a week or anything like that. So a lot of it has to do also with who you surround yourself by. If on the weekends you're hanging out, with the guys, and all they're doing is eating pizza and drinking beers, how healthy are you gonna be? And if your friends, all you guys do is go out drinking, you know, you don't wanna work out and, you know, you're meeting for happy hour and having that big piece of steak, it's the same thing. So I'm not telling you guys to drop your friends, but make new friends, you know? So what you wanna do is start hanging out with people who have a similar lifestyle as you, right? Because they're gonna help you, they're gonna be that influence as well. And then this guy, who knows who he is?
Oh, that Jacqueline.
Jacqueline, yes. So the reason I put him up there is because he practiced what he preached. He was a mentor, he was a motivator, he was a coach, an author. You know, he's the one that put juicing on the map, right? And he died at 96, and the guy looked amazing. So the reason I put him up, and there's another lady. Oh, where is she? Oh, this one's missing it. Oh, this is not good. There was a lady, what's her name? Geraldine, the bodybuilder?
Yes, Miss Geraldine.
Yeah, but she's not up there. Anyway, so there's another picture of a lady here, and you guys have probably seen the meme, and it's a black female, and you see her all muscular, and then next to her there's a lady that's looking out the window, and they're 74. So, I think her name is Geraldine, if I'm not mistaken.
It is Geraldine.
She's the oldest bodybuilder, you know? And the reason I put these people up is because people use their age as a cop-out card, or they'll use something as a cop-out card, right? And you shouldn't. So, and then I also put another picture of a really buff guy, who in the picture he was about 74, 75, and he's my dad, and he looks amazing, and people think he's in his 50s, okay? So these are people that I feel are mentors to others. So one mentor that I had growing up was a beautiful woman. She was fair-skinned, beautiful blonde hair, and in New York, she would leave the building where I was raised, and all the guys were just, you know, were mesmerized by her. And not only did I look up to her, obviously, because she was beautiful and all, you know, guys were after her, but she was very, very nice to everyone in the community. So she was a giver. And growing up, I mean, this lady was amazing. She was always there for everyone. The only problem is she wasn't really there for herself. So she lived a very stressful life, and it was one thing after another, causing a lot of stress, sometimes working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. And at one point in this office, I had rented this machine, and it measured your level of antioxidants. And antioxidants, who knows what that is? Doc?
There.
So basically, antioxidants were found in nuts and fruits, vegetables, and what they do is they help counteract the effects of oxidation. So basically, inflammation, disease. So what the machine would do would measure your level of antioxidants. So the more antioxidants you have, the less chance you have of ever getting cancer, inflammation. So if you were in the red zone, that was the lowest level of antioxidants, and the blue was the highest. So one time I had my dad come, and I measured him, and he was in the blue. I had my son at the time, he was 2, and he was in the blue. And then I had my mentor come, and she was in the red. And I remember she would eat Pollo Tropical all the time. She would have sodas all the time, Diet Coke. And her excuse was she wanted help. She would ask me for help. I'm like, well, obviously you need to change your diet. And she's like, oh yeah, I'll do it later. And she kept postponing it. And then lo and behold, when I had the machine, I remember it was 2012. It was the beginning of 2012. And at the end of that year, I diagnosed her with cancer at 56. Okay? So she was much younger than my dad, you know? And it's unfortunate because what she did was she made very poor choices. She was there for everyone else. She didn't take care of herself. And when you don't take care of yourself, you're being selfish because there are people who depend on you, right? And this, let me see. Go back to the mentor. And this was my mentor. That's my mommy. Okay? That's me. So she didn't take care of her health, and growing up, she would always tell me, your health is your wealth. And then ironically, she didn't practice what she preached, right? So what people don't realize is that when you don't take care of your health, of yourself, then other people suffer. So I'm left motherless, my brother's motherless, my dad is a widow, and my children are left without a grandmother, you know? So even though I've always been into my health and everything, you know, since I was young, this even opened my eyes even more. And I'm like, you know what, I wanna help. You know, I'm already in a field where I help others, I'm in a field of service, but I really, really need to open people's eyes about what's going on here, you know, because what killed her was ultimately what gave her the cancer was her poor diet, she never exercised, and what ended up killing her was modern medicine, was chemo, in a matter of literally 7 weeks, okay? So, exactly. So, I want people here to be proactive and to feel empowered and to not be afraid to make certain changes, you know? And then everyone here has a why as to why. So this is my why, my little twins, okay? And these are the people who depend on me. So I can't afford to get sick and not take care of my health because I have others that depend on me. What else? And then we're gonna talk about stress. And there's 3 types of negative stress. So one of them is physical. So if you get into, let's say, a sports injury, car accident, that's gonna cause, you know, inflammation, it's gonna cause chronic disease, that's one type of stress. The other type of stress is chemical stress. So who has heard of atrazine? No? Atrazine? So atrazine is a pesticide. And what it does basically is it feminizes certain animals and it feminizes boys as well, okay? The same company that makes atrazine, and I can give you tons of information on this, but they also, because atrazine feminizes male animals and any males basically, it also increases risk of breast cancer, okay, because it's a xenoestrogen. And the same company also makes a chemo drug for breast cancer. Surprise, surprise. Exactly. So these are chemical stressors that are in our environment that we don't even know about. Isn't that sad? Right? And then you were speaking of breast cancer, and one of the things is, you know, we get radiated on women at the age of 40, sometimes earlier, getting radiated all the time. And the example that I give my patients are, if you have a seed and you don't do anything with the seed, nothing happens, right? If you plant the seed and you water it and you give it, you know, tender loving care, what happens to that seed? It's gonna grow, okay? Unless it's in my house, nothing grows. But if you have the seed and the seed is called cancer and you're meant to get this cancer at the age of 80, but now you're feeding it, right? So now you're giving it radiation every year, sometimes twice a year, and now you're like, oh, there's 3D mammograms now, those are better. No, that's 10 times more radiation. And now you're causing inflammation by putting 50 pounds of pressure on your breast. Now you were supposed to get breast cancer maybe at 80 or 90, maybe it wouldn't have been that aggressive, you would have probably died from something else. Now women are getting breast cancer earlier and earlier, okay? So I'm all for something if it's gonna prevent it and it's gonna catch it early. So I'll do a pap smear on my patients. Why? Because when a pap smear was invented, the rate of cervical cancer went down by 70%. When a mammogram was invented in the 1950s, what's the rate of breast cancer now? Yeah, it's higher, yeah. So the morbidity, the mortality has not gone down, it's gone up. So if you're gonna radiate yourself, you're gonna do something, think there has to be a reason. The thing is that we don't know. Like I said, there's so much information out there, we don't even know what's the right information. And in the United States, disease brings in lots of money, okay? And it's unfortunate. Because I'm sure that if we were told all this stuff in our environment can increase risk of breast cancer, mammograms can increase risk of breast cancer, we wouldn't have so much breast cancer. Among other things, you know, colon cancer, so many other things that's out there. So other chemical stressors, who's heard of Monsanto? Right? So please, this week, go watch the documentary Food Inc. So Monsanto recently was bought out by Bayer, okay? And Myra knows that I don't like to put in the Mirena IUD because Bayer owns it, and they own Claritin, so I will never buy Claritin out of anything other than generic. So Monsanto basically has another compound called glyphosate. And glyphosate is a chemical disruptor, okay? So glyphosate, who knows what that is?
Poison causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Among other things, exactly. And it is also known as Roundup.
Right, Roundup.
Everyone has been exposed to Roundup. You see it, you know, at Home Depot. That's what people use for the crops. So whether you eat fruits and vegetables only, or whether you're eating the cow that's munching on the grass and consuming the Roundup, I mean, we're being poisoned on a regular daily basis, okay? And this is very, very sad, okay? And nobody cares. You know, the information, if you really look for it, it'll be there, but it's so hard. Everybody works, right? Who has the time to constantly be, who has the time? Who has the time? I'm telling you. And he only has that, they only have 7 kids, right? So, no, but honestly, when you work a job and you're trying to be there for your kids, your family, you don't have the time, you know? So you have to depend on someone that's gonna give you that right information. That's why functional medicine is so important. Another chemical that's very common, and I brought this here, are these three little packets. Who knows what this is?
Yes.
Artificial sweeteners, right? So there's equals, Splenda, and where do you find these?
Everywhere.
Everywhere, right? So if you're diabetic, oh, let's try this, right? And this has something called aspartame, right? And that is, aspartame actually turns into formaldehyde, which then is a neurotoxin, and it increases your risk of Alzheimer's, of dementia, right? And look at these beautiful pastel colors. Do you think this was on purpose? Right? It wasn't a mistake. I mean, obviously it looks so benign. Where do they have this too? The hospital, right? So if anyone is on a diet, they have their coffee, they're gonna serve you this. They're serving you toxins, right? This is horrible. It's pathetic. So, atrazine is also, aspartame is also found in children's cough medicine. So our kids are being poisoned, and we don't know. We're thinking we're doing the best. You know, we're thinking, oh wow, it's FDA approved, or whatever the case is, and you know, a lot of us are so fooled. And that's unfortunate that we're being exposed to this and not even knowing it. Also, if you look at all these chemicals, there's so many things, you know, something called xenoestrogens, which are estrogen, they mimic estrogen. And nowadays, the men from now compared to men from 50 years ago, they look very different. Not all of them, you guys here look amazing. Not all, but if you notice, there are more men with man boobs, the love handles, and a lot of them are not even really fat, you know, and it is these things that they're exposed to, and they're exposed to, you know, from childhood, you know. And I see a lot of kids are 13, and this is when a boy is supposed to have his highest level of testosterone is in his teenage years, and yet he's walking around, you know, with love handles and with, you know, little boy boobs, and it's unfortunate, you know. So these are chemical stressors, and then obviously there's emotional stressors. So even, you know, you put on the news for 5 minutes, and even if you think you're okay, that's gonna cause emotional stress. And even studies that are done, you turn on social media just for a few minutes, and it has such a negative effect on you. On most people, it'll increase your cortisol. You're comparing your life to someone else's life, and oh, this is not fair, and you know, I want to look like that, or I want, you know, I wish I had a marriage like this, or whatever the case is, you know. So these are all stressors that are affecting our daily lives. What else? Okay, so then let's talk about hormones. So we have the fat-storing hormones. So who thinks that insulin, estrogen, and cortisol are all bad? They can't be, right? We would die. So if I got rid of your insulin, what happens? You become diabetic. So even though it's fat-storing, everything is basically keeping things in equilibrium, keeping things in balance. If I take away your estrogen, what happens? The men know.
I'll tell you what happens.
Exactly. Mood swings. The husbands are like, I want out, you know. You know, the vagina gets dry, you know. So all these other things happen, you know, that are not beneficial. So obviously we want estrogen. And what happens if I get rid of cortisol?
You got it.
Basically, yeah. I think the most you can survive without cortisol is 7 days. You're lucky if you survive 72 hours. And you die. So there's fat burning and then there's fat storing. But we need to have a good balance. So I just put Tony there again. Just a reminder, we don't want to be like this. And he's not even, from what I recall, he's not even 40, right? I think he's
39.
30, yeah. Yeah. And then these are different body types. So some people have a combination, but normally when you have more estrogen, you have, you know, more hips, you know, and the adrenals. So when you have too much of problems with your adrenal glands, it tends to be stored more in the mid area. And then the thyroid is more spread out. And then liver, you know, the man looks like a pregnant woman basically because of the liver is unable to metabolize estrogen and things of that nature. So different things, you know, when you look at people's bodies, you can kind of tell what's going on too. And then obviously we all want to find answers. So when you go to your doctor, normally they do lab tests, right? And what happens? So they'll tell you, oh, okay, you know, your TSH is normal, you can go, right? A functional medicine doctor doesn't just use a TSH, for example, as a screening test. They'll use a free T3, free T4, reverse T3, thyroid acid, right? And what we look for is optimal ranges. So a normal range will include sick and healthy people. That's how they got normal, because normal society, they're sick and healthy. but you want to be optimal. And the same thing with testosterone. So a guy might go to his primary care doctor's office and say, hey doc, I don't have the energy I once did, I don't have that desire to do things, to get up. And it's not just a sex life that the testosterone affects the man, it is everything, it is the core being of the man. So when you go to the doctor, usually, the doctor may be like, oh, it's not that bad. Or he may take out a prescription pen and write a prescription for testosterone. But what if the problem is not testosterone, it's too much estrogen in the environment? Because estrogen will compete with testosterone. So if all you have to do is take away that estrogen, then you don't have to write for testosterone. Or you may have to write for less. And then a lot of doctors, they don't want to put men in this range, right? They're like, no, that's dangerous. It's not good for your prostate. How many 18-year-old boys do you know running around with the testosterone 1000 have prostate issues, right? So instead of optimizing it, they might give you just a little bit so you feel just a little bit better, right? But it's not good enough. And then you're not fixing all the other problems that may be causing this, right? And in order to do this for the person, you have to really sit down. It has to be a long conversation. You cannot do this in a doctor's office in a matter of, 15 minutes. And then there's cortisol. And so what happens is that in order for you to accomplish your health goals, whether it's weight loss, whether it's having more energy, whatever the case is, there's different variables. And what most people do, they'll do one. They're like, okay, or two. I did fitness, I worked out, and I changed my diet. And then they don't see results, or they see results, but they're not long-term. And in order to have long-term results, you need the 5 pillars. So everything has to be together. So you want to treat the person by putting these pieces together. Right? So if you don't have nutrition, fitness, you don't balance out your hormones, you don't detox, and you don't have the proper mentorship, then most people are going to fail. Okay? It might last 2 months, 3 months. And I have patients, they come to me, they do the phentermine diet, and they're happy. They lose 30 pounds, 20 pounds, and then what happens? They get it back. Because they don't know what to do after that. Okay? So this is where mentorship comes into place. So, can you influence the future of your health? Yes. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have the correct test order. You want to see what is the underlying cause of whatever condition it is that you have. You want to focus on the cause and not just the symptoms. And you want to correct the dysfunction, not alter the labs with drugs, and obviously you want to address the body as a whole. And one of the examples I gave is if you have, let's say you consume, glyphosate, whatever, and it's disrupting your gut, for example, what happens is nowadays there's so many other diseases and so many prescription drugs for these diseases. So if you're consuming something that your body sees as foreign, what happens? And let's say in your gut, your intestines is perfect, because the intestine is the barrier to the rest of your body. What happens is that your body, seeing this protein as something foreign, it attacks it, and now you have an autoimmune disease. And now you're damaging the lining of your gut, and you're absorbing things you shouldn't absorb. Instead of just absorbing nutrients, now you have leaky gut because you've damaged your gut. And now by absorbing things that shouldn't be there, what is it that people have now? Fibromyalgia, right? And all these other autoimmune diseases that didn't exist before. I'm seeing a lot of thyroid cancer now in young women in their 20s. That's autoimmune, usually starts out, and then they have some type of, thyroid cancer, some other cancer, right? And all of this is the environment. All right, and obviously you want to have the proper mentorship. So tell me and I may remember, show me and I will remember, involve me and I will understand. So what I always tell people is that if it's important to you, you're going to find a way. If it's not important to you, you're going to find an excuse, right? So wake up, stop procrastinating, and if you're willing to do the work, you can have anything. Go rocket. All right, so that's the end of my lecture. So if any of you want to stay and learn more about the program, then you're willing to stay. If you want to leave, because it's kind of late, and have some food, who wants me to stay and talk about the program? Give me permission. Okay. So basically, the lifestyle program that we have, and before I even go into that, when you go to a doctor's office, what's the average amount of time that a person spends with their doctor?
15 minutes.
Ooh, you doubled it. It's about 7. That's the average.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and that's why doctors have to rush patients, because it's not like before. Like, I spent 2 half days here at the office arguing with insurances to get paid for services I did. I'm like, I did her surgery, I took out 20 fibroids, and I'm not getting paid. Or I saw this person, you know, she had a vaginitis, and it's unfortunate, it's getting worse and worse and worse. So doctors have to see more patients because they may not get paid for a large portion of the patients they see because they're arguing with insurance, and it takes a lot. So sometimes you don't feel like arguing for $20 or $50, you know? And if they take $10 here, $5 here from every doctor, I mean, they're banking, they're making more money than what they already have. So the average is 7 minutes. And when you go see the doctor, how much does it cost you?
$75 copay.
For the copay, 75, some people 20, some people 0. So basically, per visit, a doctor makes, depending where you're in the United States, anywhere from $100 to $300, okay? For 7 minutes. Did you get all this, did you get this kind of information from your doctor when you went for, you know, when you go for 7 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever the case is? No. So even though you may not physically be spending the money, I mean, you're paying insurance, but they get about $100 to $300, okay? And like I said, I'm not here to knock doctors down. When we're in a field of service. So when we went to medical school, it's because we wanted to help people. The thing is, we didn't know all of this, okay? Because they don't tell you any of this. So basically what the program consists of, it's a complete wellness evaluation. So we do a consultation, and then we do a plan of action. So if you already have labs, I welcome you to bring your labs. If it's something that I've already done, we'll kind of reiterate it. And what the program entails is seeing what is your goal, what do you want to accomplish. Everybody has a destination. My destination is to be supermom, okay? I don't want my kids not to invite me on vacation because, oh, you know, mom's arthritis is acting up. I don't want to be this person in my 50s and 60s. Or, oh, mom can't come because, you know, she has the back problems, you know? So everyone has a destination. So the goal is to get you to that next destination. So everyone's plan of action will be different because everyone is an individual. So when we do this, the total cost is $287, and it's not a 7-minute visit. It's anywhere, it could be 30 minutes, 1 hour, depending on the person. So what it is now is because you've already been pre-educated today. So I don't have to tell you all these things about what's going on with the system. You know, obviously some of us are more educated than others about what's going on, but the consultation is $87. And then if you come with your spouse or family and I'm speaking to them, not bring them for support. I'm not gonna charge you, you can bring 5 people for support. But if they also want to be seen and we have a questionnaire that you fill out, and that questionnaire will ask you questions that most doctors have never asked you, and it's very thorough. And if the person also comes with you, whether it's a spouse, a significant other, your best friend, whatever the case is, then it's obviously a little cheaper, it'll be $47, okay? And that's where we move from here. So if anybody's interested in this and moving forward, then I'll have you speak to Myra or to Giovanni, and then I'll stay here to answer any questions any of you may have.
Can I ask you some questions about the program?
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're very thorough because I'm a patient of yours, but
Can you believe this? This is a couple, and who's my patient?
I brought her.
Yeah.
But my question, and in the book that you recommended was fabulous. I finished it and it was very helpful. I really learned
Which
a
one
lot.
was that one?
Grain Brain.
Rain, oh, good.
It was very good.
Yes,
book,
yes.
very good book. And you know, all we talked about, what I'm really interested in is a program that, and I know you would be consistent with this, but a program that would provide us some synthesis for the stuff we are reading, so that we don't have all the politics that are played into what's publicized as being the newest fad and that kind of
Exactly.
stuff. And I know the more you read, the more you get the idea of what's real and what's not
But it
real.
becomes so overwhelming because now you're like, do I eat tomatoes because Dr. Gundry says that lentils
Yes,
are bad?
exactly.
You know what I mean? Or do I do a keto diet the rest of my life? You know?
Exactly.
And that's the thing. It's like my job is to do that research for you so you don't have to do it. I've invested years, time, money, and you guys don't have to. And you shouldn't. That's not your job.
I
you
would
know?
be fine if you would direct me, because I like that kind of stuff. That's a hobby of mine, so I like to read that kind of stuff. But you know, I have read Perlmutter before, and I think Perlmutter is very good.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah, he's very good, and he's good as is Mark Hyman, and they're all in the same
they're on the same category.
They're all in the same
They
category.
remind me of, what is it, the singers and the dancer, what are they known as? Is it from, oh my goodness, the tap dancer?
Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.
No, and the group, they were known as the whatever bunch. Do you know what I'm talking
Ready?
about? No. Oh my goodness.
The rat pack.
The rat,
Rat
what is it?
Pack.
The Rat Pack.
The Rat Pack.
The Rat Pack. They remind me of the Rat Pack of medicine. Yeah. All right, so we can discuss this more, and I'm gonna turn this off, and then you guys can have some hors d'oeuvres, and if anybody has individual questions, I'll be here.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the door's locked, so we can't get out.
It's so funny because I just, made an appointment with a function. I thought you were Dr. Jones. Oh, really? No.
We went to a conference in November, and I'm more like workout clothes, and my roommate sits out, and you know, this is a medical conference, and I'm next to her, and people basically trying to talk to her, and I'm like, here, the doctor's right there.
Oh, that's too funny.
Everybody signed in? Yes.
So, anyway, have you heard of Dr. Abrams and Mario Mira?
Yeah, West Abrams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just made an appointment, I mean, that's so hysterical that you're, because I had never heard the term functional medicine until last week.
Yeah.
And I had written down,
Oh, Mark, can you put this in the kitchen? I just kept these, I can show you. Nobody used that.
I know, right? Benton and Foundation Abrahams and that's so interesting.
Yeah, him I know because I have some patients that go to hormone therapy.
Okay. Because, I would like to, so when we do this kind of thing, it's not covered by insurance? No.
No, that's the thing, insurance will cover things that are,
Yeah.
they
No,
will
it's-
cover IV infusions, they will
Yeah.
cover supplements, you know?
Right.
But if you have diabetes, then you're covered, you know?
So then we keep cutting and just continue to do, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but so. and
No.
just-
So basically, that's what I'll discuss with everybody. There's different programs, and basically, it's a curriculum that you're involved in.
I see.
And it involves health coaches. It's just, it depends what it is that you need.
The plan of
you know?
action.
So exactly, everybody's plan of action is gonna be different. So like if you're, let's say, fit, you wanna get more fit, I have bodybuilders.
I see what you're
If
saying,
you
okay.
really wanna get into yoga, I have yoga instructors. You know,
Ah,
so it's
interesting.
because the thing is, the problem is that anybody can see me, and we'll spend some time together, but there's so much more, you know.
Yeah.
And let's say I'll give you an example. If you have headaches, right? And I'm an OBGYN, right? So I shouldn't even be discussing headaches with you, but I do. You know, I discuss everything with my patients. I'm like, well, where do you work? And maybe it's a chemical you're exposed to. What if you're indoors? There's no sunlight, and now it's blue light. Okay, my kids, if you ever see them with glasses, they don't wear glasses. Their glasses are anti-blue light glasses. Because when they're on the screen, because nowadays in school, they're on the screen a lot, they're getting headaches.
Did you?
So basically what this is it looks at you as a whole, like everything. So when you get a health coach, you need to really delve in. No one has that time. I can easily see you and get, okay, do blood work and hear the hormones, bye, and that's it. But then there's so much more because in order for you to get from A to B, you need more hand-holding, you know?
Okay, yeah.
And that's the
Makes
problem. If I
sense.
see patients every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, most people, they don't change,
Right.
you know, because they need more handholding. They need that coaching. If you don't have the 5 pillars, it's very difficult.
Right.
And the thing is that insurance, there's so many things out there. For breast cancer, there's a test, even before, let's say you have a family history, whatever the case is, it's a urine test. And the urine test tells you how do you metabolize estrogen. And everybody, some people are poor estrogen metabolizers. Did they teach you this test in medical school? Of course not. Insurance doesn't cover it. There's thermographies, which is what I tell my patients to go get. And that's what I get. There's no radiation, there's no compression.
Yeah, I've done it.
Yeah, and what it's looking for areas of heat. Did they teach that in medical school? But they do it in socialized countries. Because socialized countries, they don't want their citizens to get sick because they cost money, right? So that's the thing. It's basically an education program. It's not just you getting blood work. and getting a prescription, because that's easy, you know? Anybody can get blood work, I give you a prescription, and that's it, and then you come back every 3 months, 6 months. But it's more about, you know, a lifestyle change, getting educated. And when you do, you're gonna know so much more. And even now, you know more than most doctors and nurses, you know. But you have to take the time. You have to do due diligence. Very difficult. Most people don't have that. It's very difficult. Yeah.
Well, I tried to do it even when I was working full time, and that was really hard to do.
Yeah.
It was really hard to do.
No, thank goodness they have audiobooks now. I mean, they make it a little easier.
Yeah,
But it's very overwhelming.
Audible books are good, but I find myself wanting to reference
Yeah.
certain PDFs and.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. I like highlighting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and then be able to reference, go back and.
Exactly, it's hard. No, I agree. Like I listen to certain things, you know, on Audible, depending what it is, and then I have to have the book.
Yeah, I wish well, I can't say I wish I didn't ever got it. I'm gonna order it online. So
Yeah. No, then you know what to look for with the grain.
What's that?
With grain, you know what to look for too with the chapters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No, I've actually, since I took my blood test, my blood test last time, I changed my diet and I felt a lot better.
Wow. Yeah.
I felt a lot better.
Yeah. No, I recommend anyone who has high cholesterol, please do that. Patients that have children that are autistic, I'm like, for ADHD, I'm like, you need to read the book, and then just, you know, there's so many things.
Yeah, well, see, I was thinking about Lori, recommending it to Lori, but
Yeah.
I mentioned the book to her, Brain Brain. She heard of it, I don't know if she's kind of in denial about her son. And so it's real touchy.
I always tell people just do the Audible in the car, because a lot of people, if you're really not into it, you're not gonna take the time out to read a book. But if you just play it all the way to work, once you hear the introduction, then you don't want to listen to more.
Well, like I said, you're right, and I think it would be very helpful to do an Audible, and then if it's a resource book, you can go back and read it again and really cement the information you want and have it. I got so many books in my house right now.
But if you like to take some space. Thank you for coming. I'll see you tomorrow. Either today or I'll email you, one of the staff will email you a packet, and it's a questionnaire. You fill out that questionnaire. If you have labs done already in the past year, then I recommend you bring the labs. If you're a patient, I'll give you a copy. Yeah. Yeah. But you just bring the lab, if you had any. If you don't have any, that's fine. We'll just still talk about what it is that you're.
Just for those consultations, sometimes Tuesdays and Fridays, like whatever works best, but I typically would be doing them on Thursdays at whatever time you're available, whether it's first thing in the morning or after work, like whatever it is, then I just according to I know it's subjective because it depends on the case. With some people it's a little bit quicker. With other people it takes a little bit longer. But it's always like that initial, I was like, let's fill me up. Buy me a drink. Pay all the attention. So the initial consultation, it depends. Some people want to
We have it so that people read, and then we'll have
to some people, it can take up time. Because, you know, again, we're not talking about something that's cookie cutter. Like if you're explaining a generic diet plan, then we time it and we know it's 15 minutes. But because it's so individualized, every person is different.
she does send you, well, he sends
Oh,
you
yeah.
a form that you have to list 3 pages and it asks you that.
3 pages plus a couple of pages
So when
that
we
should
there, we talk about.
that way.
Depending on that, how long it's gonna be, because as she
Yeah,
goes
because
along,
it's
she
an
reads it,
educational
she'll know exactly what you're looking for.
And then what it is.
Like if I had told you like, oh, when I first started working here, it would be
Because I
a
have to go
consultation,
over
because I would be like,
extensive.
anxiety, insomnia, can't lose weight, what's going on, everything tastes like, you know, so for me, like, I was there every 2 hours, because, you know, I was a work in progress, but.
Let me ask you,
She does.
no, well, is there any, but I think there were a couple of, like the girl, depending on what, then so that I can hear. So I'll send it to you.
So,
And if you guys want to book a consultation, let me know.
We would be interested.
okay, so then, yeah, you would write, I'm sorry, but she would do it.
There you go, okay, I'm seeing everybody.
Depending on what plan she got you on, it's, you'll either, from every month or every week. So if you need injection, or bring
Yes, there was a lot of stuff that was online, and just, to here, right, or there are other interventions that would have like IV. Let's say there's a class on detoxification. So it'll have a Tuesday, but someone can come, then
like that, so we don't fill out the questionnaire, we won't know what exactly it will be. So like, we're having blood issues, your other would have to choose yoga or
Well, these people,
what if you're deficient on vitamins, then
but it
we
is
would have to
seminars that we get that here.
The price
Yeah,
I see, so.
It's so things that they can incorporate into their lifestyle.